Starfield, one of the most hyped and anticipated games of the year, has been released, and there's a lot to get into and talk about in this game, so I think we should probably just get right into it. And I will try to keep spoilers, or at least big spoilers, out of this video, because I never like to have that stuff in my videos, but sometimes I do. But I'm just going to try to keep spoilers out. Let's get right into the bad first, because I actually don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about this game, but the bad stuff that I am going to talk about is kind of a huge problem. And the first bad thing I'm going to talk about is the game's performance. It is absolutely terrible. I mean, it seems like no matter what you're playing this game on, it's not running as you would think the game, well, I guess it depends on what you think. If you're used to Bethesda titles, I guess it might run how you would expect it to, because let's be honest here, previous Bethesda titles have always kind of had bad optimization and performance problems, but this game's performance problems is just way more than any other Bethesda game, in my opinion. It's just terrible. It's like no matter what you're playing on, the game isn't really going to run all that great. If you're playing on Xbox, you're going to get 30 frames per second, even sometimes 20 frames per second at times on Xbox. And then on PC, it kind of depends what you're playing on, but then it really doesn't matter what components you have in your computer, because no matter what you have in your computer, it's going to run worse than you probably thought it was going to. And in this game, FSR is kind of a necessity for most builds. You kind of just need FSR to keep a consistent frame rate. There is no DLSS support, but you can add a mod into the game to get DLSS support if you want it, though sometimes it does have problems with giving the game a few extra crashes, or at least I have noticed. And 60 frames per second in this game is kind of a rare sight. It usually only happens if you're inside buildings, and that is inside buildings that you have to load into, that they're separate environment, not buildings that you walk into, you can just walk into. I mean buildings where you open the door and then it loading screen into the building. And then if you're on console, 60 frames is just not possible. You're going to be hoping to keep a consistent 30 frames per second on console with dips into 20 frames per second. And then the second thing is crashes. Now, I haven't got as many crashes as some other people, and I put around 40 hours into the game so far, and I've only crashed about 5 times. Now, some people have been reporting more crashes, and I have seen some people, apparently it just crashes right when it loads up. The game won't even load up because it has some problems or something. I haven't personally had that, but I have seen it happen to someone. And people are also reporting a lot of bugs, but I only encountered 2 bugs. One is kind of weird, because NPCs will just kind of start floating into the air and just kind of floating all the way up into space. They never come back down. They float all the way up into space, and they apparently only show back up when you load the environment over again. I don't know why that happens, but they just start randomly floating into the air, and it's kind of funny. And then the other bug is kind of a bug that needs fixing, because it's kind of weird, and it needs fixing. A character will start talking, but their lips are not moving at all. Like, their lips just won't be moving, but the character will be talking, and then eventually their lips will start moving, but then they'll stop talking, and then their lips will continue to move. Now, I've only had that happen a few times, but it has happened, and those are my main issues with the game. The biggest issue, in my opinion, is performance.
Guess we're done.
Now, I don't even really know where to begin with this game, but I think we'll just start right at the beginning of the game, pretty much, where you make your character and the character creator. Now, previous Bethesda games like Fallout 4, Skyrim, and stuff like that, they've always had good character creators, at least in my opinion. And this game is no different. You can pretty much create your character however you want. Now, it's not as in-depth as like a game like Cyberpunk, but it is pretty in-depth, and you can make pretty much your character however you want. You can also choose your character's background, starting perks, traits, similar to the Outer Worlds or Fallout New Vegas. Something that, now that I think about it, might have actually been missing in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Moving on to the gunplay, or the shooting, the combat, the non-space combat, that is, because we'll talk about space combat in a minute. But non-space combat is pretty good. Something about it just feels good to me. I just like using all the guns, especially the guns with lasers. Something about the guns with lasers, they just got lasers coming out of them, and it kind of reminds me, there's like one gun, I forget exactly what it's called, but it has like this multi-laser setup, and it kind of reminds me of a gun from Dead Space. And I've hardly even played Dead Space, but it kind of reminds me of Dead Space, and it's just cool, and I like that gun. But something about the guns in this game just feel good to use. The guns sound great, the animations are great, and it's probably the best combat in a Bethesda game, or at least the most fun combat has been in a Bethesda game, at least for me. Now, space combat, on the other hand, to be honest with you, I think it's fine. I think it's good. I don't know other people's opinions on it, but I think it's fine, and I have no problems with the space combat, but I also haven't really played many space games. This is actually probably a space/sci-fi game that I've played the most, where you can have a spaceship and you get into space combat. So I don't actually have really much to compare it to, so I'm not going to comment about that as much, because again, this is kind of really the only space combat I've kind of experience. Really, I haven't played many other games that have space combat. The closest thing that I can think of that has like spaceship combat and stuff is a game called Marauders, but I don't think that really counts, so we're just gonna move on. But I think space combat is fine. Actually, now that I think about it, I do have one thing to say about space combat, and that is I wish that when you got the enemy health, like their spaceship health all the way to the bottom, instead of exploding instantly, they kind of were just stuck there, and then you could fly over, you could breach their ship, and then take them out, steal their stuff, do what you want, maybe even take the ship as an extra ship, like repair it and then take it, but when you shoot them and their health goes all the way down, they just explode. And I wish they just didn't explode instantly, and it took like an extra hit once their health was already down. It took like an extra hit to blow them up, is what I wish. On the other hand though, I really like building my own ships in this game and customizing my ship, like changing all the different colors, painting it and just building it from piece by piece, building the ship, making your own ships, putting the color schemes on it. I find that fun, and there could have been more optimizations to customize the interior of your ships. I wish there was more of that, but either way, I spent multiple hours just building my ship and customizing it. There's also a build system for making outposts, which is similar to the settlement system that is in Fallout 4, and you kind of just build your bases and stuff, and you can hire people to do stuff at your base, and you can also send some people there for free. Like, you can send your companions there to do stuff, kind of like Fallout, but in Fallout you didn't really have to buy anyone to go to your base, but in this game you hire people to go to your base and do things, and you can also build things to get materials and resources and stuff like that, and you can also use it to store materials, though there's better places. In my opinion, it's better to store your materials on your ship than it is at your outpost, but your outpost can store materials, and now that I think about it, it actually might be better to store your materials at an outpost. I don't know. That's up to you. You can do what you want. You can store your stuff at your house. Actually, I don't think you can store it at your house, because there's actually not much that you can do at your house, but you can store your resources on your ship, on your outpost. I think you can make resource routes between your outposts too. So there's options like Fallout. It's kind of like Fallout 4 basically. You can also build your outpost wherever you want. You just gotta like find a place where you want to place it down, and you can also choose whatever planet you want. So there's like hundreds of planets that you can choose from, hundreds of moons or planets that you can choose from where you want to place your outpost. And I think you can have like 8 or 9 outposts, so You got lots of options. There's also homes that you can purchase, or rooms. Some of them are just rooms, to be honest, but there's homes that you can purchase, which is cool and all, and you can decorate them however you want. But I really didn't see a point in purchasing a home and decorating it when you can just do the same thing but better in your outpost or on your ships, and they serve the basically same purpose but more purpose, because your ship and outpost have more of a purpose than your home. There's really no purpose to your home other than buying it and decorating it. So you have lots of options for homes that you can purchase and decorate to your heart's content. Just know there's not much to it than that. Like, I was gonna try to purchase a home and turn it into a workshop to just modify my equipment and stuff and store my resources, but I don't, at least the one that I got, you couldn't really store anything there. I mean, you could turn it into a workshop, but you couldn't really store any resources, so there wasn't really much of a point for me to buy it to turn it into a workshop and store my resources there when you really couldn't store your resources there. You also need to dive into the expansive skill tree if you like building, as some building components and ship components require you to have certain skills, and the skill tree has skills for about everything in the game. So there are 5 different skill trees to spec in. They have lots of different things to spec in, so there's something for everyone. I also found the main story to be very interesting, and it actually kept my attention the whole time. I wanted to see what was going to happen next, solve the mystery, find out answers to everything and stuff. So the main story kept me interested, and even the side stories kept my attention. And there were some side stories where I felt like they were going to connect with the main story, or they should have been part of the main story, because they were just like some of the side stories were just as interesting kind of as the main story. Well, maybe not as interesting, but there were some side stories where you could have felt they were going to be part of the main story at least, but they really weren't. They were actually just side stuff, which is good when side missions feel like they're main missions, because that means that there's a lot of effort put into it. And the characters are also interesting with their different personalities and views on events that happen in the side missions and the main stories and stuff. They're also very well voice acted. There's also a lot, and I mean a lot, of exploration in this game, as you have 1,000 planets to explore. And yes, some of them are a bit barren or boring, but there are plenty of interesting planets to explore. There are towns, cities, structures, anomalies, bases, temples, and more to discover on the planets, along with the resources to collect and alien creatures to fight. To just sum this all up, I personally think this game is immersive, expansive, and really fun. I have plenty of hours in this game already, and I will probably put countless more into it, and then I'll probably put even more into it when I play it when a bunch of mods come out.
What's on your head? How many credits you think fitted in Ashta, boss?
Now, I'm sure I probably could have put this stuff in the bad category, possibly, but I'm not really sure how many people are going to talk about this, but something about the crafting system I found very weird and strange, and that is the lack of crafting weapons, spacesuits, space packs, clothes, the stuff you usually can make in a Bethesda game. I only noticed this when I went to make grenades, as in Fallout 4 or 76, I usually make a lot of grenades. It's just something I do. I collect the resources and I build a ton of grenades, so I always have grenades. But in this game, you can't seem to make grenades, or any weapons for that matter. And that actually seems like this part of the game isn't as in-depth. The crafting in this game isn't as in-depth as in like Fallout or something. And it might actually be less in-depth than the Fallout 76 crafting system. Or somehow, maybe I have missed it and I just didn't figure out how to do it, or I missed it completely that you could craft this stuff. But I also didn't see anything in the skill tree related to crafting guns or grenades or anything like that. So I find that very strange, and they should add that into the game, as it's weird in a Bethesda game where you can't craft the stuff, where you can't craft that stuff. But then again, maybe I missed something, but I highly doubt it. To sum up this entire video and my opinion about Starfield, if you liked Outer Worlds, Fallout, the Elder Scrolls games, then you'll probably like this game, as it's a similar kind of game to all those games, since Fallout and Elder Scrolls was made by Bethesda, and Outer Worlds is a similar type of space sci-fi RPG, but this one's I would say is a little bit more in depth than the Outer Worlds. I haven't played Outer Worlds that much, but I think there's a bit more to this game than the Outer Worlds. And the gameplay of this game, the gameplay in Starfield is good. The graphics of Starfield are great. I really think the graphics are fantastic, and the story is good. But the game is dragged down a bit by the poor performance and the unoptimization of the game, and also some of the bugs. But some of the bugs are hilarious. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you guys think about this video and what you think about Starfield. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because you want to be subscribed. And I'll see you next time.